rate to,
Yeah.
Ready here. So we will call this emergency school board meeting for Independent School District 204 to order. We do have a forum. We will be doing roll calls if we have people on virtually with us tonight. We do have everybody here. So we'll stand and put the rules flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we just have a couple of things here today. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Thanks, Mark. In a second. Thanks, Patrick. Anybody have anything like to change on that? Hearing none, all in favor. Actually, I have to go roll call, so let's go. Start with Angie. We do roll call. And the motion carries. And we're on to discussion item 3.1, discussion of the hiring process. So we're here today as a result of superintendent's resignation that called MSBA the following morning. Of the essence here because we are so close to the school year and it's difficult to get people to come in now. So having a conversation with MSBA, and that would be Gary Lee, Barb Dorn, and Amy Taylor, they recommended that the district do an interim superintendent, and that would get us through the 23-24 school year. And then now this isn't part of that, but then look to get a full-time candidate in December and do that interviewing in December, January, and finish that up in January. That's their recommendations to us. The other piece of this is how do we go about vetting candidates. So it'll be a limited number of candidates that will actually be receiving just because there's so few available right now. MSBA will and is looking for candidates right now. They recommend, okay, so typically in this situation, they would have the school board chair would vet those candidates and bring a candidate to the board. I thought that was best in this situation for us to have a subcommittee to do that. And as a result, put a subcommittee, a hiring subcommittee together. They said that if you put a subcommittee together, best practices to have your board officers on that subcommittee. The reason that subcommittee or they typically have the board chair vet those is because those candidates, a lot of times, two reasons. One, for expediency, and two, because those candidates don't want to be identified until they're actually selected. So that was their recommendation. I talked to Barb again about that this morning on that. So the goal would be to interview next week and bring that candidate or candidate to the board for the August 21st meeting. And if that works, if we can work it out that way, then Superintendent Tuska would be done on the 21st, which we would approve today, and that person could take over the 22nd. There's always talking to Mr. Haas, Carlin. There's always activity that the school board or that the superintendent will be involved with, including signing checks and different things, that it's critical to have that seamless transition there. So based on those conversations,
can I add something, Ken?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wondered why we didn't use our own committee. And so I just wanted to clarify, because I reached out to MSBA, and under the personnel committee, there's no role for a superintendent replacement.
Yeah, so they don't, personnel committee, if you look at it, and I have it somewhere here, we don't deal with any hiring or termination of anybody.
Yeah.
So, there really isn't a committee to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what MSBA came back with, so. As far as, I can talk about that a little bit later, but again, I would recommend that we move that direction, with our action to, approve the superintendent hiring process when we get to those action items. Any other discussion, or we'll move to action items? Okay, so action items. First thing we have to do in order to be able to actually post the position, they believe that we should accept the termination of Superintendent Tuska. And typically, you don't have to do that, but in our contract with Superintendent Tuska, we had with the consent of both parties. So it was kind of a gray area whether we actually needed to approve this, but just to cover our bases, we would have this meeting and approve that. So I would look for a motion to approve the termination of Superintendent Tuska's contract effective August 22nd, 2023. Do we have that motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Patrick. And a second?
I'll second.
Second.
I'm going to take Mark because I heard his first, Angie. So I've got a motion and a second. I will say just a couple things to clarify there. One is I did have Margaret, our attorney, go through through his contract, and I asked her, I asked her specifically to look for a buyout, because I heard people saying, "Oh, is there a buyout? Are we buying him out?" There's no salary buyout for Superintendent Tuska. And she indicated the contract is in line and similar to others in his position. So.
Hey, Kent, I had a question.
Yep.
But for healthcare, it says that we will cover him until he's Medicare eligible. Does that still hold true if he's leaving for another job?
It does, yes. I had that conversation with Mr. Haas and Margaret both. We will be.
So that would be our cost.
Yep, that will be our cost. Any other questions? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'll start to my left. A roll call vote on that motion. Angie.
Aye.
Brandon.
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Kent, aye. Motion carries, and that is approved effective August 22nd. So he will be at the 21st meeting, and our interim hopefully will take over the 22nd. Okay?
I have another question.
Yeah.
What do we do if we aren't able to find an interim? Because you said there's a limited number of people and we only have 10 days.
So it's a question, I have to go back to MSB, but I think we have to bring somebody on who can fill that has that licensure. We do have a couple people in the district who, I know at least one that has that licensure that we can bring on in some kind of emergency situation,
Okay.
So, but we would look to get this done before we need that, before anything needs to get signed by the next superintendent. So, Carlin, how often, I'll ask, how much, is it a daily basis, or could it go a couple days?
The duties of the superintendent?
Yeah.
It could go a couple days.
So we have a couple days. So, okay, so with that, we'll move to 4.2, approve the superintendent hiring process. Do we have a motion to approve that as discussed? I'll start with, no, I need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Patrick. And a
I'll second.
Thank you, Kate, for the second. Any discussion on that?
And this is, I just want to make sure that I'm correcting this. This is just for that interim, okay? And then as you had outlined in your email, we will be starting the long-term process in December, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Thanks for the clarification.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll start with my left. Angie.
Aye.
Brandon.
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
Aye.
Kate.
Aye.
Patrick? Aye. Ken? Aye. The motion carries. We have approved that process. Then, the only other thing is, we like to, I'd like the board to approve our continued use of MSBA in guidance. So that would be my recommendation, is that we continue using. There are other firms out there who we could use in this process, but MSBA will do it for free. And they've always directed us well in the past. So we don't have to make this official, don't have to use a term, but I think it would be wise in this case. So do I have that motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion on that?
I think it's wise to use them too, especially given the amount of time. We wouldn't have to, go choose another. And yeah, and we've worked with them a lot.
Okay, we have a motion.
I-
Anything else?
I just want to echo, thank you, Ken, for spending the amount of time you have this week already reaching out to Minnesota School Board Association. And I think it's been beneficial already in our first few days here to get clear direction.
Thank you. We will, just so people don't tune out as soon as we approve this, we do have a little bit of discussion just around the start of the school year, and there's activities happening around here, and just discuss a little bit about some of those, how we'll have to cover some of those. So, but the motion and the second is on the table. So I'll start with Angie. Your name.
Aye. Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Kent, aye. The motion carries, and we will look for guidance from MSBA. So before we take a motion for adjournment, a couple things. I was just looking on the calendar and talking to the administrators. So we do have the luncheon, not this following week, but the week of the 21st after our board meeting. So I'm not sure who can make that, but typically our superintendent kicks that off, and it's kind of driven at that level. Not with administrators, but either the board or superintendent. So those who have feedback would be appreciated for that. And but I will plan on attending and filling in. We also have things like tours for new employees that will be taking place that same week. And talk to Ashley Kaplan and the administration team has that covered. So I think we have most of that, and I will try and make myself available to the admin team as they need.
Anything for the parade this weekend? I know in the past, Mark and
I don't believe we have. a full
Ashley. Ashley coordinated a group of leadership team and a bus, so they'll be in the parade this weekend.
Okay, thank you.
So if you can make a parade, it'd be great. We're always invited.
Yeah, I'll share the details with you.
Okay, so with that, do we have a motion for adjournment?
I have one more thing.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of questions, and I just want a clarification on the timeline of the situation. Just because it does put us in a bind, it's so short term, and then as a board, we didn't find out till Wednesday after the public. Like in the future, how do we prevent that from happening?
So.
There was already like the
What-
public letter out.
Yeah, so what happened there is Superintendent Matuska shared that with his admin team in late morning, and that was to be in confidence until at least 4 o'clock and preferably 4:30, and it got shared out from somebody on his admin team early. And so by early afternoon, word was out. And the reason that it wasn't to be shared was because his employer hadn't approved his contract. So he didn't turn in his resignation until after that, when we spoke on the phone that evening. So it wasn't he didn't officially turn it in until that evening, but he had talked to his admin team, letting them know that his plans were, and they shared that, and it got shared out.
Yeah, I
So
meant
that's the
specifically the
confusion.
public letter prior to a communication with the board. Like, I thought it was a little inconsiderate for the board to find out from the public letter that went out to,
So when that public letter, at the same time I was having a conversation with Superintendent Matuska, and before I could get something out, that letter had gone out. So
yeah. So in the
So
future, I
that's why.
think we should, I don't know,
how do you?
keep, to have some strategy.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
certainly do that, but I hope, when it hasn't officially been shared, or there's an official resignation, it's difficult to make any, to comment on that, because didn't know if that was actually gonna happen.
And I
Because
can
it has-
appreciate that, but the letter came from Mark to the public. And so it would have been considered, I think, for, we as the board, we are the boss of the superintendent, been notified. So in the future, I think just kind of that chain of command thing.
So in this, let's just talk this case. In this case, how would have you had me handle that differently? Because I assume that's what you're asking, but I'm on the phone with him and then he immediately sends this communication out. And so now I'm scrambling, trying to figure out what we're doing the next morning.
Well, in the same way, I think we just had Ariana Wright leave, and she was very intentional about saying she's looking for other positions, going through the positions, having a second interview, and she did keep that group tight. But as a board, I did think we had privilege to have that information prior to the public. Then when it came up, it wasn't this huge surprise. I feel like as a board, we were a little bit blindsided, especially with the timeline. I understand the need to keep it confidential until it's approved by the other district. However, I don't think keeping it confidential from the board was a good strategy.
I didn't know about Ariana's stuff until it was released.
Mhm.
Yeah, who knew? I didn't know either about hers until after.
I think the admin team and
And the admin
some
team
chosen
this time too. So they
people.
shared it.
Well, I think, or even a conversation with Mark, out of respect for the board and the position that we're in, please give me 20 minutes so I can send out an email to this board, or so I can send out, or so I can call and let the board know, I think would be beneficial.
So, yeah, and just so we're clear, I had no idea that there was a resignation coming. And that morning is the first time I got notice that there was a potential resignation, a few minutes before you went in and had a conversation with the admin team. I had no idea. So it's not necessarily my place to know, but just, it's just so this board doesn't think that I had some insight previous to that, did not know till that morning. And there were other board members, maybe who, I don't know, maybe knew that morning too, but I didn't really know till that morning.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, even if in that meeting, it would have been wise for him to communicate with the board just prior to
You're
the
talking
public.
the night before.
I'm talking about Tuesday morning when he met with the admin team, when they knew we should have known, is in my opinion.
And I actually recommended or asked, maybe it wasn't wise to even share it with your admin team, because it hasn't been, you don't have the job yet. You know what I mean?
Well, what's the consequence of, if you share it
Well,
and don't
because
get
then
the
it got
job, you're
out,
still in
because
contract with us?
Right, but what happened is it got out to the public before there could be any conversation amongst the board, right? Because the admin team knew when they sent that out.
I also wonder if he's sharing it with the admin team that morning, why we didn't bring it up that Monday night when we had the night before during our meeting.
I was,
I know you weren't, but I just think out of consideration, I mean, when you're leaving a position, usually you let people know this is in the final stages and there's gonna be a vote to get it approved. That's pretty close. Instead of waiting until after it's all approved and then, hey, by the way, my last day is the 22nd. It puts us in just a predicament. That's hard for us.
so. Okay, anything else? So we have a motion for adjournment. Roll calls. I need a
Motion.
second. Second, Mark. Roll call for adjournment, Angie,
Aye.
Brandon, Aye.
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 Kent, aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Oh, should have done it before. I will, when we have a candidate, we will send out, an overview to the board, with the resume prior to the board meeting.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think we need to be a little careful about when we talk about admin putting a leak out there, just because of, Jackson County did have the document made public with Mark's name on it prior to it being approved. So I just
Yeah,
want to make
so
sure that we're not,
I had a
We're not saying that we
conversation with
don't.
Superintendent Patuska about the whole thing, and he said he talked to that individual, and that individual shared that they did share it.
Yeah.
In multiple places.
but I don't know if that's the only way that it got as public as it was. So I think we just need to be mindful of how we say things in public.
I agree, Amy, and there was also like some public communication that they had heard the Monday night before. So before his meeting with the admin team.
Hearsay, I mean, I don't know.
Right.
It's just, it's the same thing with this, this alleged.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of rumors going on.
These rumors gotta be stopped and cannot be propagated, because it just, if you don't have the information from you, or proof of it, boy, this stuff goes like wildfire.
Safe travels, Ange.
21st.
Thanks for logging off.
I'll get that on the
I think that
agenda,
would be good. Yeah.
because that's being propagated too many places. All right,
Does the school board, MSBA, do they have list of people who are just, hey, we're available to be?
so they have, people contact MSBA all the time, like superintendents who've retired or whatever, and they